Hi, everybody. Welcome to the second session of the Growth Stream. I'm delighted to welcome Elise Miller from ServiceNow and Jenny Layton from the marketing practice. You may have noticed from their rather extravagant get-up that they're going to be delivering some tips on ABM Magic. And I'll hand over to both of them now. I guess it's worth saying that, first of all, ServiceNow and the marketing practice have been winning plenty of awards in ABM, so you're hearing from some very experienced practitioners. And if you have any questions, please share them in the chat or in the Q&A, which you'll see are the two tabs to your right. Over to you, Elise and Jenny.
Thank you so much, Robert, and great to see all of you. Unfortunately, we couldn't be there in person, but hopefully this is the next best option for some practical magic. So today we'll be talking about how we take you from the selecting your account as part of ABM to when you actually start doing some magic and activating some of your campaigns and accelerating sales opportunities within your account. Practical Magic also happens to be one of my favorite films from about 1990 something. So hopefully some of you have seen it, but today we'll focus on that amazing kind of middle ground between what happens first and your activation of ABM as well. So just to introduce myself very quickly, my name is Elise. As Robert mentioned, I lead our account-based marketing practice in EMEA across ServiceNow. So very great place to be in. We've been doing ABM for a number of years now, and we've seen some great results. So I'm excited to share some tips and tricks with you all.
And my name's Jenny Layton. I'm an account director at the marketing practice. I've been in the B2B world for about 8 years now, and ABM's been really core to what I've done throughout that time, but with a particular focus and specialism over the last 4 to 5 years. So, as Elise mentioned earlier, this session is really around to talk about that, I think, mystery moment between the ABM account selection and the campaigning, which we believe is the foundation to success for any ABM program. And this breaks down into 3 core areas. So the pre-workshop prep, which consists of the onboarding call and researching the accounts, and the account workshop itself, and then building the go-to-market plan.
Lovely. So looking at the first part of that, so you've selected your account, you know who you're going to be targeting, whether it's a one-to-one or one-to-few approach, what happens next and what steps do you take? So the first step we would recommend taking is your onboarding call. So actually, before anything happens in relation to the workshop or planning ABM, actually starting with engaging the team around what is ABM and then onboarding them into your program. One really top tip for this is typically I might even go as far as drafting an email for my area VP or global VP to send to the sales team to get them excited about the investment they'll be making and their selection to be into this great program. So this is essentially a really nice step to get their buy-in and to show some of the senior stakeholder alignment as well as the sales alignment with marketing for your ABM program. Think about who you're going to invite to the session. So typically it's going to be your sales team, but also is there a solution team that needs to be involved? Any other parts of marketing working on the account? So who else could you update as part of this initial step? And then think about some of the key things that you can bring it to life. So think about some of the things and examples that you've previously delivered on other accounts, for example, or anything that you might be working on that's work in progress, just to generate some excitement with the sales team on what you might be doing, what the focus of the program is going to be. So one of the steps I'd recommend going in parallel with your onboarding call is actually starting to look into your account plan. So typically commissioning an external research and spending a little bit of time yourself to find out what actually makes the account tick is really, really important. So forget about your company, forget about your sales team, forget about the sales plan just for a second and start looking at things from the outside in. So what's the macro environment your customer operates in? What are the kinds of pressures that they're facing, maybe from the regulator, the industry, and some of the trends, and how are they responding to them? And who may be responsible for some of those initiatives as well? So prepare some of those things and make sure that you spend a little bit of time doing your own research online ahead of any calls with the sales team. So I typically Google latest news articles or maybe some interesting clippings around the strategy or changes within the organization or new appointments, for example, just to bring something to that workshop that the team doesn't already know. And then the last thing to mention is we've actually seen some of these sessions go down a storm with the sales team, particularly when you're bringing people that may not typically collaborate with each other. So think about your partner organization, think about your marketing colleagues, your customer success functions, your BU leads, and so on. So how can you facilitate an environment where they're all sharing and you're facilitating that and bringing everybody on the same page around what you're going to be doing with the customer and getting them excited?
The next section to move on to is all around the account workshop and combining some of those great ingredients that we've delivered up front all together into some sort of potion. So the first thing to think about is really around inviting the right people. So you've got everyone excited about ABM, and now every man and his dog wants to attend the ABM workshop. Or sometimes you'll find that they'll go completely the opposite way and it's a super small team who want to attend. And it's really important that you get the right people there for their expertise. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to attend the whole thing. They might only attend a section of the workshop session, but think about what role they're going to be playing during the workshop itself. So, for example, Elise spoke earlier about having senior buy-in and writing emails for area VPs. It might be that they attend the first section of the workshop, for example, just to kind of show their ongoing commitment to the programme. We've also found that the ABM workshops can be a great training opportunity. So inviting new hires to take part, almost giving them the role of the customer to validate or challenge assumptions based on some of that great research and outside-in thinking that you've done up front. The next piece is all around setting a clear agenda. So you have to treat this a little bit selfishly. You need to make sure you know what you need to get out of this session and make sure that you get that information out of the sales team. However, it needs to be balanced. You need to have a level of flexibility. As I'm sure everyone knows, sales teams can sometimes go off-piste and start talking. They might cover off something that's supposed to be later on in the agenda earlier on. And that's fine. I think sometimes we found if we've interrupted them and tried to be too strict to the agenda, it can sometimes stifle conversation and they don't feel as confident kind of speaking up and carrying on the conversation as they have been previously. It's also really important to balance views. So yes, we absolutely need to be thinking customer first. That's always what we need to be kind of considering and kind of challenging everyone to be doing. However, we all know that sales teams and us as marketers have our own kind of selfish objectives and things that we need to achieve throughout the year to hit our own KPIs. So you have to find that balance around what is our selfish kind of perspective? Where do we need to get to? What do we want to do? Does that align to the customer? Does that make sense to the customer? And if so, great. If not, have a conversation and a debate around it and figure out if it is the right thing to do. Finally, and most importantly, I think, have a good time. You're asking people to commit to a chunk of time, so make sure it's engaging, make sure it's entertaining. For example, we have often kind of given sales teams vouchers for coffee or for lunch or for breakfast as part of the workshops to kind of, make it feel like a more kind of collaborative effort. And the other thing that you can think about is gamification. And this can work particularly well, particularly in a kind of digital workshop where we've probably all got Zoom or Teams or Google Hangout fatigue. So, for example, we've kind of asked everyone to develop a value proposition for the account and we've offered prizes for the best one. So just something that makes it feel lighthearted, engaging, and gets people excited about the programme. And again, we've seen some incredible success off the back of this. We have got everyone onto the same page. We've got senior level buy-in across the kind of organisation. We've really got that kind of cross-functional support. So it's not just about sales team and marketing, but also partners. It's about customer success, customer advocacy, and everyone coming together and pulling in the same direction to deliver a great program into the customer.
Lovely. So assuming that you're running the session virtually at the moment, we've actually split our ABM workshop into 2 parts. So part 1 was the workshop Jenny just mentioned, and part 2 is our go-to-market strategy. So this is our opportunity to validate some of the things that we've heard, make sure that we've understood them correctly and there's nothing missing. It's also a chance to challenge some of the assumptions from the sales team. So when you've had a look at their plan and you've compared it with your research that you've done on the account, is there anything glaringly obvious that may not be present in the sales deck, and why is it not there, and do we need to be addressing it? I think don't be scared to bring some of those ideas to the sales team. I think they appreciate it. As you might know, you're working kind of head down, and sometimes it's very difficult to detach yourself from your account and take a wider view as to what's happening within the industry and where you can contribute. So in terms of the timescales, don't leave too long between the first session and the second session. So make sure that you're maintaining momentum. Sometimes showing progress is much better than getting to that ideal state. And you want to make sure that you're bringing people on the journey with your plan and what you're developing. So get that session in about 1 or 2 weeks after your initial workshop. Allow yourself a little bit of time to sense check things internally, maybe coordinate with various people and start to think about some of the ideas that you can bring to the party and some of your plans, and then show some progress and maybe start thinking about, well, if they agree with your plan, what's the number one thing, what's the number one priority that you're going to deliver first, and what steps do you need to take as part of that to show value straight away. Thinking about balancing short-term objectives and long-term deliverables. So this is really key. As we know, tracking and reporting for ABM can often be very difficult. So think about focusing on things that are going to matter the most and things that are aligned to your strategic plan and your sales plans as well. So make sure that you've agreed your objectives from the marketing perspectives aligned to the sales plan right in the session, and make sure that you've got a small manageable number that you're focusing on, so you don't need to boil the ocean, but maybe it's top 1, 2 or 3 things that you're going to deliver. So think about, is there an opportunity that you're accelerating with your ABM? Is there another opportunity that maybe you are sourcing or developing from new? And also think about little things. So are you developing deeper decision maker relationship with a specific advocate or contact along the way? And how can you reflect that as part of your plan and show alignment to your strategic goals in terms of what the opportunity is going to deliver in the long term as well? And then in terms of your objectives, so think about ABM is an activity type. So it is an add-on to what the team is already doing. So it's not just a marketing initiative, it's actually a business-wide one. So you're thinking about the customer and carefully considering where are your KPIs are aligning to, what objectives you're targeting. So if at any point you need to justify, show some success to somebody, you straight away have some of those objectives to fall back on to say, we've done this to address this challenge that we've agreed during the workshop is going to be very key to the account. And then think about what you're going to report and how you're going to show progress along the way. So it could be little things as well as the milestones. So maybe it's the ACV in the pipeline you're targeting, but maybe in the meantime you're showing some successes in terms of views or little engagements or additional attendance from your senior key people into your industry events, for example.
I think it's also important to prioritize areas of focus. So I think, there are often opportunities or things that are immediately in front of sales, where you don't necessarily need to help. Actually, sometimes those conversations are on track and they're already progressing, and they'll be progressing so quickly that you actually sometimes can end up being left behind. So actually, where are those right areas of focus? Where do you really want to focus the attention, and where are you going to add the most value? And asking those questions, and I think having those open and honest conversations with sales will be really valuable and show that you're really thinking about the program in a more strategic sense.
One team.
one team, and you can see some great success with it. So you know, you can see when you get these things right and when you get those steps right, ABM can be really powerful. You know, it can help to really add value to an account team, to a sales team, to a customer. It can help get you in front of a much more senior audience, and it can also help marketing get in front of the customer. So we've often seen as part of our program that where we've been adding the right level of value and where we've been delivering the right things, we've actually been able to get in front of customers, have direct conversations with them, and understand what is important to them, so that we can help to develop content and strategies and communications plans that support them as well as the sales team. And that's it.
Excellent. Well, you caught me by surprise there, because you might even be a little bit ahead of time. That was really, really interesting, really helpful, and a lot of fun as well. Love the practical tips. I'm just scrolling back into my question list to see if we have any. I guess, you know, starting off from my point of view, Elise, knowing that you have been doing this for quite a long time, both as an organization and even yourself in your role, these are kind of practical tips based on hard-earned experience. Where have you kind of learned these, and where do you think, or what do you think the biggest problems you've had to solve that have kind of changed the way you've approached ABM?
Trial and error, I'd say. So I've read a lot of books, joined a lot of sessions, and I think looked at how do we tweak the approach ongoing. There is no one size fits all for anything, and I think that's particularly true in ABM. So you really have to judge it by personalities within your account, by the culture of your organization, and so on. So you're kind of taking some of the best tips that you've got out there and really trying them. So what's going to work for you as a person, what's going to work for your company's culture, and what's going to work for the sales team. So I find that I get a really good sense of what the sales team is going to be like during the onboarding call. So I vary the approach depending on that. So which team is going to be a little bit more collaborative? Which team is going to need a little bit more input in terms of driving directions? Where does the sales plan look the strongest, and where can we really prod them? So I think just playing it by ear a little bit, engaging that from your previous experience, I think works really well. And there's no specific magic there. I think it's just around being a bit of a psychologist in a way, and trying to put yourself not just in the customer shoes, but also in the sales shoes along the way.
Yeah, I talking to Bev Burgess and various other people at conferences over the years, you know, it seems like the ideal ABM skill set, if you like, is really quite multifaceted. You need to understand sales, you need to understand people, you need to understand marketing, you need to be a good organizer, you need to be able to come up with interesting and compelling ideas. Is there anything that you've kind of put in place within ServiceNow to share that across the organization, or anything you've done working with the agency to kind of create, if you like, the playbook or what best practice looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually one of the things that we focus on constantly. So we've got a large number of people across ServiceNow doing ABM. So it's been adopted as an activity type rather than a team, which is great to see. So not only does a global team run our ABM, but we have plenty of people on the ground within the local teams running ABM as well. So sharing insight, information, kind of tips and tricks and tools and resources is very, very key. So we, a few years back now, we've created our ABM Center of Excellence, which is run globally. So this is our, essentially a global hub for where everything is held in terms of toolkits, knowledge, information sharing. We run social groups where we share some of those things, particularly posting pictures of the workshops and maybe top things around what's really worked. We think about the use of technology as well. So I am not always the biggest advocate in technology for everything, but I think it has a place and a role to play in some of these activities. So we do leverage a great platform for some of the gifting solutions, so which actually makes it easier for us to maybe share some coffees or provide some gift to the sales teams as well. And obviously working with Jenny as part of our agency, we run some of those joint activities together. So they often help me in terms of organizing some of those things and bringing in some of the gamification elements as part of that strategy. So how can we make sure that sales team is part of on the same page around the journey and get really excited? As you know, if you help to bake it, you typically like the taste of it more than if someone else baked it for you. So I think making sure that they're part of that is very important.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of the gamification in workshops. Certainly getting sales teams to really step up to the plate on talking about value propositions and putting some effort into it. I thought that was a great idea. I've got a question here from Kay Stenner. In fact, I think I might even make it 2 questions. She talks about they've just started. Their biggest challenge is stopping sales from going straight into product and selling mode rather than talking about the needs of the customer. Have you faced this where people just want to talk about the speeds and feeds of what you do rather than putting themselves in the shoes of the customer and really trying to engage them?
All the time. Jenny, do you want to take that one? I'll add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's a great question, and I think you have to part of it, I think, is being very upfront in the onboarding call and to kind of say, this is the role of ABM, this is what's important to us, we are always going to be thinking customer first. And I think also some of the work can sometimes be done behind the scenes. So sometimes if it makes sense and you're finding it really hard to get sales out of that kind of rut of having conversations around products and propositions, sometimes it's easier to allow them to have that conversation. But then when you're going into the playback session, for example, or that second part of the workshop, that's when you can kind of behind the scenes have done some work to say, okay, you said that this is what you want. This is what we understand from the customer. This is how we've brought those 2 things together. And therefore, this is the approach that we're going to take. What do you think? Does that make sense to you? And it's also, as Elise mentioned, a great opportunity to say, and actually, we identified this thing as part of our upfront research, or this thing that was important to the customer. Let's have a conversation about that because we didn't last time. Is there a product that aligns to that? Does it make sense to us as an organization? So I think sometimes if you are struggling, doing some of that work behind the scenes and bringing that to the sales team as a more complete piece of work is sometimes easier to do.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, there's a couple of things that say, so thing number 1 is if you feel like that's going to be the case even before the workshop, maybe get somebody else involved. Is there somebody more senior or a little bit more strategic, maybe an industry expert who can help you to overcome some of those challenges? So that's probably, that would be my number 1 advice. And I guess thing number 2 would be around, well, if we go back to the premise of ABM around aligning the value around the customer, so should we be going back to that research and maybe playing back some of the challenges the customer's having to the account team and actually asking them, where does that product help to solve that challenge? And maybe, the end result is you're still going to be selling something at the end of it, but the way you're talking about it could be a little bit different. So just reframing that from the customer's challenge perspective often gives enough of a push for the sales team to then see things a little bit from a different perspective.
Perfect. Well, you'll be pleased to know you actually answered both parts of Kay's question there without even knowing what the second half was. So very well done. There's a few other questions, and just these are quite short ones, but how many accounts per salesperson would you recommend running this workshop for? So let me just get that one straight. How many accounts per salesperson would you recommend running the workshop for? I'm assuming in most cases, Elise, you're doing 1-to-1, are you? Or are you working in 1-to-few as well?
So we do 1-to-1 and 1-to-few, which is the focus for our ABM. So if I'm understanding the question correctly, so typically we run for 1-to-1. It's a workshop with a single salesperson. So, and typically, I think from my personal experience, if they are running more than, say, 3 accounts in total, they probably don't have headspace to do account-based marketing, or maybe you'll be doing a lighter approach, maybe a deal-based marketing approach instead. So if they're running 50 accounts and yours is account number 48, you're very unlikely to get enough buy-in and commitment from that team to help you along the way. So it doesn't feel like the right account for one-to-one.
Great.
If you are doing a one-to-few ABM, so typically in my experience, we tend to run a cluster of 10 to 20 accounts within the same cluster. So you may end up with a workshop with a wider number of stakeholders, because some of them may be handling more than one account each. But again, I think the question is your account, how far down the line in their priority list is your account? If it's in the top tier, great. If it's the bottom tier, ABM is probably not the right approach, and I would consider doing either industry marketing or some sort of demand gen.
Yeah, very interesting. Another question is, how do you create financial targets for an account? I'm assuming in some ways that might be something that is done from a sales point of view, is it? But you get involved in that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Obviously sales are going to have their own targets, so both for the current year as well as typically possibly even for next year in terms of the pipelines. It depends on how forward-looking they are. In terms of your marketing target, I would have a think around what types of opportunities are you accelerating versus what type of opportunities you're sourcing. And thinking about it in those two ways, I think helps to clarify some of the reporting. So if you're accelerating things, you're influencing existing pipeline, and you're increasing kind of current ACV, whether it's in year or whether it's years to come. And if you're looking at a sourcing new pipeline, so maybe working with your sales team to say, well, if we were to generate this opportunity here that we're focusing on as part of Play 2, what would it be? What's the rough value that you'd assign to it? And let's go for that together. So if it's going to be 3 million across three years, great. Well, let's target that as one of the KPIs for the account and see how we go. So it's around kind of splitting acceleration versus, source or develop new opportunities for me.
I think it's also worth considering renewals as well. So actually, with a lot of the accounts, particularly in one-to-one programs, that they're often massive accounts in their own rights. They've already got significant ACV values. And actually, if there's a big renewal that's coming up, you absolutely need to support it. So thinking about that existing ACV, thinking about how you keep that and the retention and renewal rates can also be an important KPI and driver for ABM.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. And very quickly, because we've got just probably about a minute left, but it would be great to get a few tips on what kinds of content have been most useful and worked best. Obviously, that's a big question, so I don't know if you can answer that in 60 seconds. But
I'll go very quickly. So in the pandemic, during this virtual environment that we're all in, and you can't meet people face to face, we found that video content actually works the best. So particularly short bite-sized video content. So if you can get as specific as solving a challenge for a customer in 3 minutes or less and showing the art of the possible in a particular way, that is my number one go-to at this point in time. Jenny, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think video has become massive. I think the other thing that we've seen is something as simple as kind of PowerPoint or editable documents, things that sales teams can share as part of significant meetings that they've got, or even as tag-ons to meetings that they're just going to be having on an ongoing basis. It's all about getting the kind of the word out, kind of raising awareness, having that consistency of messaging in everything that you do, I think has also been something that we've seen been really successful and has been used a lot across the programme.
Fantastic. Well, that was absolutely magic. Thank you for those practical tips. I'm hoping that a lot of people have been watching that, and I think they'll find it incredibly useful. And obviously the fact you've been there and done it for several years, Elise and Jenny, it's really helpful to see and hear from you what works. So enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks for your time. And obviously, if anybody has any further questions for Elise or Jenny, I suggest you connect with them directly.
And you can download the top tip guide on this QR code as well that we've put together. Thank you, Jenny.
Yes, no worries.
Good tip. Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.